Okay, so I am just testing this out because I just realized that the live I just did not stick. It's the second time I was recording it, so I am trying to see if the revised settings I used is making a difference. So I'm not sure. Hopefully, it's fixed what the issue is. I'm going to try to see. I also want to try and see if it's primarily because I have two items. Just going to share with you what I just did. Let's see if it'll come up here. It says the camera is on. Oh, reactivate. All right, there we go. All right. Okay, so this is what I just created on my last live, and I was hoping that folks could actually see it from start to finish. I don't know, maybe I'll just record a straight up video without doing multiple. I am trying to get this set up, and it's always the best laid plans. I felt like everything went smoothly. I didn't get any error messages, and then when I finished, I went to look at the live, and I was like, oh boy. Anyway, so if you're interested, I did include the video itself. It's on my page. I'm going to do a whole video. I'm going to record it with one camera. I'm not going to use any other software or apps just so that y'all can see it because I feel like I've tried this twice now and it didn't work out. So it will be if you're interested, this is just a simple tissue cover, and the outer fabric is 5.5 by 6.5. The inner fabric is 5.5 by 7.5. The tag I used is 1.5 by 1.25, and to box the corners, I used 3/8 of an inch for the box corners, and I did walk you through how to figure that out using your ruler. So, and I'm just talking now because I want to see how long it'll take before I run into another error. Again, maybe the setting is the better setting. If it is, then I'm going to save it because so far I haven't run into any issues or um, it hasn't given me any prompters or anything like that. So let's see if it does, if it keeps everything. But in any case, and I thought I set it up yesterday because I actually went through everything and I um, tried to figure it out and I thought it was good. So okay, so this is your ruler, and I wanted to show you. Let me see. I need a pointer tool. I'm gonna use this point. I'll use my seam ripper as my pointer tool. Okay. So if you're new to sewing, I might as well make good use of this time since I've already sewn this, and I'm not gonna do it again. If you're new to sewing, and you'll often hear people say, "I'm using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm using an inch seam allowance or 1/2 an inch seam allowance, 3/4 of an inch seam allowance." These are all things you will hear over time. It's rare to have about a full inch seam allowance. Okay, so that is not something I hear often, but I do hear mostly 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. So let me show you how you do that reading. Okay, going back to basic math, it's actually pretty easy, but I think when we're sewing, we tend to get a little confused or panic that we don't have the right information or we don't have what we need to get things done. So we may panic a little bit. So let me show you how this works. So we're going to look at the number between 5 and 6. So that's a full inch there. If you look closely, you'll see that between 5 and 6, there are 3 long lines that come down. Okay, the first one from before as we're reading from 5 to 6, the first long line is 1/4 of an inch. That's what you would consider 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. The middle line is a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and the last line is a 3/4 of an inch seam allowance. That should be easy for anybody to figure out. You don't need any extra whatever. As long as you know how to read a ruler or measuring tool, you know that. Now, when we talk about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, it's going to be, if you look closely at at your ruler, there's a slightly longer line between the 5-inch mark and the 1/4 inch mark. It's slightly longer, and that is where you have your 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So it's a slightly longer line between the 5 and the 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's 1/8. And if you use that as a tool, you can just go the next one between the two longer lines is another it's another eighth of an inch, and you will do the same thing another eighth of an inch. So if you say you're measuring an eighth of an inch, it's the distance between this 5 and this 1/8. If you're measuring 2/8 of an inch, which is basically a quarter, that's it. Okay. If you're measuring 3/8 of an inch, it will be the distance between your the slightly longer line between your 1/4 inch and your 3/4 inch. Okay, so yes, this is your your 1/2 inch rather, not quarter. Your 1/4 inch and your 1/2 inch, and it's just slightly longer right there. That's your 3/8 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch, 2/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, 4/8 of an inch, and so on and so forth. So, we don't necessarily call it 1/8, 2/8 or whatever. 2/8 is a quarter. And then 3/8 is where you would see that, and the 3/8 would just be the distance between. It would be a line between the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch mark. So right there. So hopefully that has been helpful. I know that people struggle with that when it comes to using a ruler. And it's really, really easy. It's not something that I would say you need to struggle with. So if you ever have questions about how that works, this is a simple way to read it. Just pull out your ruler, measure the longer lines. You should have 3 long lines between each inch, and then you should have a slightly longer line between each 1/4 of an inch, and that is where your eighth marks are on your ruler or on your measuring tape. Pretty easy. I will leave a handy reminder, like a handy tool you can print out on your own at home, or you can download it. I'll put that on my website at isewithjoy.com, so that helps you if you want to reference it in the future. These little tools really does help as you go along in your sewing journey. So if you have questions about that, do let me know. I try to post videos that break everything down really, really easily for folks, so that when, like I remember, well, it's been a while now, a few decades since I'm aging myself right now, but I remember when I first started sewing, there were a lot of things that I needed to eventually get used to, and this was one of them. Like, so it's helpful to be able to read, know how to read and know how to measure. Your sewing machine also has a sewing plate, and on the metal plate there, it has the markers that you can also use. So just remember, it will be the line. If you're doing an eighth of an inch, is a line between my machine has a quarter, 5/8, and so on. So it would be the lines between your 1/4 inch, your 1/2 inch, and your full inch, and you measure from the edge of your fabric to where the needle punctures your fabric, and that is your seam, and that's your seam allowance. So hopefully that's been helpful. Thanks for watching. No errors, and it seems like this one recorded just fine. So I guess it all just depends on what works and what doesn't work. If this doesn't load properly, I'm going to give it one more try. If it doesn't load properly, what I'm going to do is just do a straight up video and post it on my page, and it will be located in the same folder, on the same playlist where I have all of my easy, beginner friendly projects. I have a few on my site, on my YouTube playlist, as well as on my website. So if you're looking for actual patterns that you can cut out and start making projects, you can find that on my website at isewithjoy.com. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day. It's vacation week for me, so I'm trying to take things slow and just relax. Okay.